It's time for fantasy.
Number 34 on the offense is on my fantasy team. So, touchdown.
Versus reality.
Break out the red panties. We're rich, baby.
With Levack and Goz on 104.5 The Team.
Did you go 2-1 again last week?
I should have gone 3-0 last week. I'm still upset about it. I should have gone 3-0, and here's why I should have gone 3-0. You know what? I'm not going to tell you why, because I actually got that coming up later on, why I should have gone 3-0.
I should have too, but Buffalo Bills went. You know what would be great if we were a doormat for the Patriots. But aside from that, I got the game we were at right. I got 2-1. You went 2-1. So you still have a half-game lead over me. You get to decide who goes first.
Yes, the records right now, my record stands at 19-22-1 on the season. Levack stands at 19-23. Why is there a week more than 14 on there, they may ask? Well, because we did double weeks for Thanksgiving.
Yes.
So if you're trying to do the math, that's why it works out. You went first last week. I'm going to go first this week.
All right, have at it, sir.
Again, we're talking fantasy football playoffs here. So if you're in the playoffs, this is a big week. We're talking about that big prize, the trophy, maybe that cheddar, whatever you're playing for. These decisions could put you over the top. Now, remember, I'm not necessarily saying we're going to have these guys start over somebody in your league, but they're going to beat their PPR projections, and sometimes you should consider starting them. My first spot is this. If you're in an 8-team, a 10-team, or a 2-QB league, okay, more so 2-QB league here, here's a great play this week. Jimmy Garoppolo. Yes, the San Francisco 49er quarterback. It's a big play this week. I like him so much this week. If I had the chance to start him over my boy, my man crush, Case Keenum, I would start Garoppolo over Case Keenum this week. Love him in 2 QB
crying in
leagues.
Minnesota right now.
Last week, Jimmy Garoppolo had a good game for the 49ers. He threw for a little under 300 yards, but no touchdowns. He got close to throwing the ball 40, 45 times in that game. So Kyle Shanahan wants to throw the football with Jimmy G. He's got a nice projection this week, 15.6. Decent. So we're talking about 275 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. But I love the matchup. He gets the Houston Texans, and not just the Texans, he gets the Texans indoors. It was formerly known as Reliance Stadium. I think it's NRG Stadium now. And believe it or not, even though the Texans have a good defense, they've allowed the 4th most fantasy football points to quarterbacks this season. So you give me Garoppolo, indoors, Shanahan wants to throw the football, didn't throw any touchdowns last week. Everything adds up to have Jimmy G, Garoppolo, have a huge fantasy day at the quarterback position this Sunday.
I see where you're going, but I think it's rude that you would go away from your boyfriend Case Keenum. I think Jimmy G is going to have a good week as well, but I think it'll be comparable to Case Keenum's. I think they'll have probably very similar numbers, as a matter of fact. But I'm not betrothed to Case Keenum, so I can say that.
Don't do that to me. It's going to drive me nuts all Sunday. I got to decide between one or the other.
Just to make matters worse, I'm going to take Case Keenum, and I'm going to take those Minnesota Vikings. I'm going to lay the 2.5 points at Carolina against the Panthers because I just think that Minnesota is the cream of the crop when it comes to the NFC, and they're going to start to prove it more and more each and every week. Carolina is a schizophrenic team. One week they're world beaters. The next week they couldn't beat Cleveland. I'll tell you this right now. I think Carolina's a good team. They're probably a playoff team of some variety, but they are not as good as Minnesota. If Minnesota can continue to play at the level that they have been playing at, they will be representing themselves in their home stadium come February.
I can't figure out the Panthers either, man. That's a great way to put it. I don't know what we're going to get each week. I thought last week Carolina was going to have their best game of the season against New Orleans. I thought they were going to smack around Drew Brees. No, it was the opposite way. The Saints looked really good against Carolina. And you know I can't pick against Case Keenum. I like that pick for Minnesota. Hopefully Carolina can show somebody for Panther fans that they're that good. But I like the pick for Minnesota. Here I go with the running back spot. And this drove me insane. And I know I'm being extremely selfish, but I don't care because it's fantasy versus reality. And this is all about me and Levack, all right? The running back position I had last week, I had the best week set up the entire year. I was 2-0, and not just 2-0. My projections were through the roof of how good my picks were. And then I got to Monday Night Football, and I had Joe Mixon, okay? And if you remember the Monday Night Football game, Mixon, in the first quarter, was 25% away from hitting his PPR projection. And then he got hurt. All right, I get he got hurt. He didn't get benched, but me sitting there screaming at my television saying, no! Why are you getting hurt? I got you in fantasy versus reality. I'm going back to the well this week. Give me the running back position. Give me Giovanni Bernard. the backup for Joe Mixon to have a huge fantasy football weekend. Believe it or not, for as good as that running back core has been for the Bengals at the start of the season, when it was Mixon, Bernard, and Hill, nobody's left. Bernard's the only one left in the backfield who's healthy, who's had production in the NFL before. It's a huge number, though, for Giovanni Bernard. In PPR leagues, 14.8. That's a huge number for Giovanni Bernard. So we're talking about 60 yards on the ground, maybe 3 catches, and another 60 yards receiving. That is a big number. You got to hope for receptions out of the backfield. The Bengals like using their players like that. Waiver wires, maybe a flex spot, a PPR play for running backs. The Bears this season, right in the middle, 16th most fantasy points allowed to running backs this year, but give me Giovanni Bernard as the play in PPR and flex spots this weekend.
And also the name that I would give myself if I was an old school actor.
Giovanni Bernard.
Now starring Giovanni Bernard in Any Which Way But Fat. All right, here we go. My second play, I'm going right after my boy, the Flying Hawaiian. I got Marcus Mariota having the best week he's had all year, and I think he's going to do it against the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals have been overachieving. They will be playing their second week most likely without Adrian Peterson. That's going to hurt them because he is kind of the stopgap. He's been better for them than you think, but Father Time wins all wars. He looks like he's about to get the W on this one. He going to eat him a W.
Oh, don't put your fingers back. No.
Meanwhile, Carson Palmer's still out. I just think that the Cardinals are finally going to lose this battle of attrition, and I think the Titans are going to go ahead and get it done in stylish fashion. Give me the Titans laying 3 points against the Cardinals.
I feel like if we go back in the history of fantasy versus reality, are the Titans one of your most popular teams you've had this season?
The Titans, I think, are underrated by Vegas a lot of times because Marcus Mariota just does enough. He has not been – I don't think he's had 20 fantasy points all year, maybe once or twice in your standard scoring leagues, but he is able to do enough between those that double-headed running back situation. He's able to do enough, and that defense does enough. I think that Vegas underrates them a lot.
My last pick here, I'm going with a tight end who some people may have never heard of before. Remember, this is the wide receiver tight end spot here. But this week, and I couldn't believe it when I read the stat, up to 52% of fantasy football playoff teams have picked up this guy on waiver wires this week. In some leagues, he's the most acquired player in leagues. And it's Houston Texan tight end Steven Anderson. Some people have never heard of this guy before. But Steven Anderson had 13 targets last week when he stepped in for C.J. Fedorowicz, who is now out for the season for the Texans.
Great hat. I like to wear a Fedorowicz.
I knew you were going to say that. I actually wrote it out as Fedorowicz, just like that. It might not even be the way you say his name. I just think of it like that. 52% of leagues he's been picked up for fantasy teams. 4 catches and 42 yards. That's all I need. An 8.3 projection. This is a classic Field Yates. When we talked to him on Thursday, he calls it streamer pick. So in other words, if your tight ends stink and you don't trust any of these guys, this is the time you put him over the top. Those tight end positions, unless you got a top 5 tight end, and maybe you're missing a Rob Gronkowski, this is the guy you consider acing in that spot. Steven Anderson, PPR leagues especially, with so many targets last week. I get the matchup isn't great. Niners have allowed the 5th fewest fantasy points to tight ends, but he's worth a shot. It's a big boomer bust, and that could be the difference in a fantasy football playoff game for your team.
Very interesting, and I have used him actually whenever CJ's out, Fedorowicz, whatever his name is. But I will tell you this. I'm ready for my third pick, and it's going to blow your mind because I'm going to take the New York Football Giants.
Really?
Plus 3.5 at home over the Dallas Cowboys during the Eli Manning Love Fest. There were anywhere from 500 to 1,000 Giants fans in the black hole last week who were cheering for Eli. Imagine the Love Fest is going to happen this time when even the former players like Victor Cruz are going to show up wearing number 10 jerseys. Sterling Shepard's supposed to play. The Giants will do just enough with interim head coach Steve Spagnuolo to beat the Dallas Cowboys or keep it within 3, and that is why I am going to take the New York Giants. I'm going to take those 3.5 points at home as a home dog and watch the Giants screw up Dallas's playoff hopes and their own draft position all in one fell swoop.
I can hear the storylines and the phone lines lighting up already on Monday if that happens. All Cowboys fans want to throw Jason Garrett out of town, even though he was the coach of the year last season and got to the playoffs with a rookie quarterback and running back. I think Mike James, our producer, was yelling about Jason Garrett 2 days ago, and I could hear Giants fans saying, wow, is Ben McAdoo that bad as a coach? Maybe Spags should be the future if they could beat Dallas. All those storylines would definitely come around Monday if those picks hold. Ready
Live
to recap?
from JP Bruno's.
All right, I'm going to recap my picks again. PPR projections here. Points per reception league. I'm talking about beating the projection by ESPN standard scoring PPR leagues. Quarterback position, Jimmy Garoppolo. Give me Jimmy G against the Houston Texans indoors, NRG Stadium. All he needs is 275, a touchdown and a pick to beat that projection of 15.6. Look for a huge game from Jimmy Garoppolo. Running back, I'm going back to the well, the Cincinnati Bengals. Give me Giovanni Bernard, the only healthy running back for the Bengals right now. A huge number, though, 14.8. I like how the Bengals use those running backs out of the backfield. Mixon had been well. You can make an argument Bernard played better than Mixon on Monday Night Football with some of his plays. Give me Giovanni Bernard in wide receiver / tight end position. Give me one of the most acquired players in the fantasy football playoffs, the tight end for the Houston Texans, Steven Anderson, 8.3 fantasy
Mr.
projection.
Anderson.
Give me Anderson beating his projection this week.
All right, I'll recap my picks for you. Give me the Minnesota Vikings minus 2.5 at Carolina. They're going to win this game. They're going to have it under control. I'm not real worried about it one way or another. I think they're in good shape to do this. Tennessee Titans. I think Marcus Mariota is going to have one of those breakout games that we're all going to be real excited about. He'll win with his arm and his legs, and I'll lay those 3 points as they beat the Cardinals, who have been beaten by the DL most of the season. Finally, give me the New York Giants plus 3.5 at home over the Dallas Cowboys. Remember, this game was originally the 4 o'clock game. It got flexed to the 1 o'clock game because there really wasn't that much excitement behind it. Well, thanks to Ben McAdoo and his mismanagement of Eli Manning, there's plenty of excitement now, plenty of reasons to watch, and I'm going to give this game a 10 as in Eli Manning, and I'm going to go ahead and take the Giants for the upset. That is fantasy versus reality.